Welcome to Uncommon Analysis. If it's your first time here, thanks for stopping by. Subscribe, like, share, tell your friends and neighbors, join the conversation. We're glad you're here. And for our existing subscribers, we're always glad to see a friendly face. So welcome back. Excuse me. So today I want to take a few minutes to talk about what's going on in the tariff realm, particularly against China, because I think there's things going on in China most people don't realize, or at least in discussion against China most people don't realize. So first we'll go through Trump, as you know, has announced 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. They went on hold early last month for a month. He gave them a hold from February 3rd, said you got a month on hold. And the reason he instituted them was to try to get better security and better enforcement on the northern and southern border for illegal immigration, particularly on the southern border, right? We have drugs coming across the border. You have human trafficking. You have people, not only adults, but children are being sex trafficked into the United States. Gangs are establishing beachheads inside the United States. They're operating inside the territorial barriers of the United States anymore. They're not just on the other Mexican side. They're here. In fact, you just had a rancher, I believe, killed by an improvised explosive device down by the border. They believe was planted by one of these gangs. So the southern border, I think most people understand. There's a lot of bad people and a lot of bad things going on and coming across that southern border. The northern border, maybe people aren't as quite up to speed on what's going on across why we're doing this against Canada, because Canada's it's always our friend, right? They're our ally. They're our buddy, man. We've been connected at the hip pretty much since our country's birth. We have if not the longest, one of the longest unprotected borders in the world. We are attached economically heavily. I know I know Canada has made many efforts over the years to try to diversify their trade portfolio, so the United States is not such a big part of their economy and trade partnership. But the reality is geography just rules, right? We're neighbors, and we are two very large countries. Now, Canada can't compete with us on population, but in terms of size, Canada's a big nation. It's got a lot of natural resources. They've got oil. They've got other things. They've got lumber and all kinds of things. So we are big trading partners. So why are we threatening a 25% tariff on Canada? Well, Canada has some very loose immigration rules and laws. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm going to go through at least a couple of examples, or at least one example to show what's going on. So what happens is, because Canada has a very loose immigration system, so send all the immigrants to the world. And actually, there's that's part of the reason, at least a contributing factor to the downfall of Trudeau, has been this huge influx of immigrants. Just huge, massive influx of immigrants. There's not enough housing. Also, that comes along. Services are stretched. All things come along when you just mass import people, right? But because of this loose immigration, what happens is people come to the United States through Canada. They'll get into Canada through some means, and then get shuttled down into the United States, and then they're here illegally too. Now, you think I'm making this up? No, I'm not. Here's a good example. This is a scandal that didn't get a whole lot of traction in the United States. It should have gotten a lot more, in my opinion. But basically, what they were doing would be these human traffickers would get primarily Indians, students, well, not students, Indians to apply to schools, right? Get student visas. So they're accepted at some school in Canada, but they never actually show up at school. But that gives them the visa to come to Canada. And then these human traffickers will shuttle them down to the United States, across the border illegally. Now, and then the school would get kickbacks. They're making money off this, but the kids, the people never actually showed up at schools, right? There's 20,000 of these at least known, right? 50,000 have repelled their assignments. Like 50,000 Indian students, and Indians make up about 20,000. Sorry, it's 50,000 total international students have been given student visas into Canada and never shown up for their classes ever. They have no intention of going. They were never going to go. The human traffickers were using that as their way to get them into Canada, and then they shuttle them down into the United States. There was a family that actually, this all came to light because there was a family that died, a mother, father, and two young children who were part of this. They got imported into Canada through this system, and on their way down into the United States, they froze to death as they tried to sneak into the United States. And that opened a whole investigation, and it was a big thing. I don't think it got nearly as much press in the U.S. as it could. I know in certain segments, if you're Indian, you're from India, you probably heard about it. I'm sure it was in some of their niche press. But the mainstream press in the United States largely ignored this. This is what's going on, right? So and other things come across the border too, but this is a big thing. So this is why Trump is saying tariff against Canada as well. It's not because he's just mean, because they need to close down this nonsense because they're coming into the United States illegally through Canada, and everybody knows it. Okay, now the other thing I want to talk about though is China. This is the main reason I want to talk about China. China, we all know, China dumps stuff on the United States cheap. China is not our friend. Okay, China has not been our friend. The U.S. companies that embrace China because they just want to get in the marketplace, they've gotten burned. I think a lot of them are fools. They just have greed in their eyes. But anyway, China dumps crap in the United States all the time. China is not our friend. So, but there's more. So, Trump has said he's going to increase tariffs by 10% on China. Add another 10%. They're already paying because they already have some tariffs. They're going to add 10% to it. But there's more going on here. And obviously the 10% more would raise the price of things being imported for China. But there's a bigger thing in play here that most of the media has ignored, or at least I haven't seen it reported in many places when they talk about tariffs, particularly with China. And that is the de minimis rule. Trump is discussing, or at least floating the idea of completely getting rid of the de minimis exemption for China. Now, what is the de minimis exception? Well, the de minimis exception is basically saying if an item is under a certain value, the minimum, if it's less than this minimum value, and you're importing it, we're not gonna hit it with import fees or all this other stuff. We're gonna let it just come through. Right now, it's subject to tariff, yes, but the import taxes and other things that would normally affect it are not subject to it because it's below that value. So, give you a little perspective on this. Why? Here's an article right after Trump took office, right? Not even took office, but Trump's about to come into office, where Trump were in 2016, he won the election, right? He's getting ready to be sworn in 2017. So now the left is all besides stuff. Mainstream media is all besides stuff trying to defend the Obama administration, saying they were tough on China. They were tough on China. And then it hurt. And so that's why they were tough on it, which is a bunch of bunk. So let me show you what happened here. In 2016, Obama administration raised the de minimis from $200 to $800. Now, what does that mean? That means that before that change of the rule, anything over $200 was subject to import fees and taxes. Not just tariffs, but import fees and taxes. After this happened, which was the last year of his administration, he raised it to $800. 4 times. He quadrupled it. The Obama administration quadrupled the value of the de minimis, meaning now anything under $800 is no longer subject to import fees and taxes. Well, needless to say, that's not good if you're trying to protect lower-end items in manufacturing. So anyway, what Trump's talking about doing for China, and just for China, is getting rid of this completely. So the de minimis value for China is 0, meaning anything coming in from China is now going to be not only hit with these tariffs, not only a 10% higher tariff, but now these import fees that will hit everything, whether it's a $5 item or a $500 item. All these things under $800 that were getting imported without paying these import fees, now we're going to have the import fees added as well. Now, you may like or not like that policy. That's your prerogative. But that's what they're discussing doing. And that's going to have an impact beyond just the tariffs. And it's even more than the fees, because there's one more thing that's going to come into effect if they do this. And that is when you get rid of this, if they get rid of this de minimis rule and say China does not get a de minimis exemption at all, that means if you as an American want to buy something and have it sent from China to you, like you go on Temu, right, or one of these other sites, Alibaba, right, these Chinese-based sites, and you buy something, it's not only going to cost you a little more to buy it because, okay, let's face it, if you say you go buy, I don't know, say a $10 item. All right, $10 item. Okay, 10% more tariffs makes it $11 item. The fees might add another $1 too, so you're spending $15, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but say you have to spend $15 now to buy this, what used to be a $10 item, because of these fees. You're probably still going to buy it, right? Because 15 is still probably less than the 25 or 30 it might cost to go to a store and buy in the United States. However, because they don't have the de minimis exemption, you now are importing that item directly. You are importing that item. It now is going to go through the import process, not just be waved through, which means you want to order that item, that shipper over there in China has to, you are now an importer, which means you are going to have to provide that shipper with your tax ID for them to ship that information, to ship that to you. Now, what does that mean? Well, for most people, unless you run a business, your tax ID is your social security number. So if they do this, you go to Temu or Alibaba or one of these Chinese sites and buy something and they want it shipped to you, you're going to have to provide that seller with your social security number just to have it shipped. Now, if you don't think that's going to have an impact, I think you're mistaken. I think that's going to shut down a lot of that purchasing because most people are not going to go, I'm going to give some Chinese company or who God knows who it is on the other side of this screen my social security number just to buy a $5 or save $10 on buying some item. I think most people are going to say, no. So just so you understand, I would just hope you understand that. So hopefully I explained that a little bit to you, that the China stuff is way bigger than just adding tariffs. If they go through with this de minimis exemption, like get rid of it and say, China, you have no de minimis value. Everything you import everything you import is subject to import fees, taxes, and everything else, not just the tariffs. You've just changed the game. I think you're going to see a lot less people going, I can save $3 ordering that through Alibaba or $5 or whatever. Maybe even $100. If I got to get my social security number up to a bunch of people just to have it, I think that's going to change the calculus of a lot of people purchasing. So this is tough on China, folks. If they do this, that's about as tough as you can get from the consumer side on China. I mean, you can raise more tariffs too, but I mean, this changes the game. If they get rid of de minimis for China, and every single purchase from China by an individual in the United States is considered a direct import, and that purchaser is going to have to provide their tax number to China, which for most people, because they don't run businesses, don't have an EIN number, it's their social security number, is going to devastate that entire consumer pathway for those companies into the United States. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day. And with that, I am out.